I never knew that I needed to see Ferris Bueller get in an argument with the Dread Pirate Roberts until the movie Glory. Leadership concepts in the movie Glory. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is Henry Fayol and the 14 Principles of Management. Now, one thing that I really want to highlight a few of these. One of them being unity of command. I just made the joke about Ferris Bueller, but really these white commanders in the movie Glory are in charge of the Civil War, or this regiment of all black soldiers in the Civil War, which the North has really created as almost like just a joke in some ways, and or at least in the sense they are not taking it seriously. Um, Number 4 on Henry Fayol's 14 points of management, unity of command. There really, in the beginning, is not a unity of command. And that's when Shaw, um, played by Matthew Broderick, which is why I made that joke, he really has to get on his men and tell them, no, this is how it's going to be done. They have to unify the commands before they can go back to it. They can be united, and I think that that's true in a lot of situations. In a family situation, in order for effective leadership, the parents over the children, the mom and the dad, have to be on the same page. Myself, when I work with kids and I'm working with another teacher, we have to be on the same page with discipline and back each other up so that the kids know that we are a unified front, and that solidifies that we are one in charge. And I'm going to come back to number 7, but a big one that I noticed was remuneration, a fair wage, and that is a big turning point in this movie, and I'm going to come back to that in a second. But that's important because these soldiers are viewed as less and are not given a fair wage, and a reaction to that brings something else around. And then finally, really the another huge one of these that is esprit de corps. In French, the spirit of the body, the people, the unified people. And in one of his sort of journals, Shaw remarks that these black men have this certain camaraderie, their music, their shared heritage, their shared struggles, and it's not until he feels he's left out of that spirit of the body, and it's not until he makes a few decisions that he's able to tap into that. One of the ways is that he befriends Morgan Freeman's character, which, if we remember from previous leadership theories, gosh, it was in Hoosiers, the In Grouper, and it was also in Dead Poets. It's in a lot of stuff, really. The In Grouper. Or making everyone feel like an in grouper, and then but also having a few one-on-one, like closer friendships within the ranks, which is what that becomes, and they actually promote him into an officer, which is really cool because that was actually against the rules to have a black man be an officer, but they find a way to bend the rules because they couldn't commission him to be an officer. No one ever told them you can't promote from within for him to be an officer, so they find that loophole and they do it. And there's a constant finding of loopholes that these people do, that they do to make it fair, to have their men taken seriously. Throughout, one of the new concepts that we brought up is the different steps towards understanding why you're following the leadership. One is avoiding punishment, and you kind of see that attitude among these men, and they've been through so much already where they in situations where they didn't want to be, so they really don't respect authority. So they're just trying to avoid punishment. They're laughing and joking around, and their superior officers are like pushing them and hitting them, and like that's really not working. And then aiming at reward is really when they're trying to do the right thing so they can get things, or in one case do the wrong thing so they can get things. Like one soldier deserts just so he can get shoes because that's a reward that he needed. And really, it it kind of steps over step 3, that good boy, good girl attitude. They don't. That's almost like something that these soldiers don't have because of how much they've been through. They do end up with their loyalty to law and order, which I'm going to come back to because, and this is halfway through the steps, it's halfway through the movie, it's the turning point, it's the big moment. I'm going to come back to that. The justice and the spirit of the law, they are fighting to change the laws, and I think as they go on, they start to see that. And then step 6, universal principles of ethics. When they are really able to follow their white leaders, and then once some of them are promoted, all of their leaders, is when they know that they are on the same page, that they are all fighting for that same equality. Universal principles of ethics. They've all got the same principles. They're all ready to fight together. So that was really the newest concepts that were brought in. And there were a few older concepts, that we saw. Cohesion and group identity. Like I said, there was already that group identity that Shaw has to become a part of in order to lead these men. Form, norm, storm, and perform, or form, storm, norm, and perform. That's any of the drills that they're running, from the marching to the shooting to the actual battle plans. But the big thing that we talked about is Etzioni, official, informal leader, and formal leader. And the shift for Shaw's character, because he is so much trying to make that shift to that next level, and he fights to get his men, literally like going into another officer who is part of, the supplies, and like fighting him on it, and like knocking things over, throwing a fit about the fact that his men don't have shoes, to get them something fair. And I think the men don't see a lot of how that he fights for them until, and like I said, in Henry Fayle's 14 Principles of Management, one of those things is remuneration, a fair wage. And there's a moment where the men are not getting $13 a month like they said like they had been promised. They're getting 10, specifically because they're a colored unit. And some of the men start making a demonstration of like, we're gonna rip this money in half, and we're not gonna take it. And then, I almost called him Ferris Bueller. Shaw stands up and he says, "You know what? If you will refuse this money," and it's this moment where everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, is he gonna freak out? Is he gonna be like, get out of my army?" And he goes, "We will not take it either." And he rips it, and he puts himself on the same level as his subordinates, and that is what makes a great leader. That is what brings him, from the official to the informal to that formal leader, takes him through those steps, like blows him past any rank or official title, to where these men love and respect him because he has put himself on their same level. And it takes him going through and seeing their things, like seeing a deserter saying, all right, the punishment is being whipped, and when they take his shirt off, he's covered in scars because he's been whipped because he's been a slave his whole life. And so he literally has to put himself in his shoes by going to look and see what's wrong, why did he run away. And he's asking Morgan Freeman's character this, and he says, well, the boy needed a good pair of shoes. All these men need shoes. That's when he starts fighting those battles for him. It comes full freaking circle when he's just like, I'm on the same level as you. If you're not getting paid fairly, guess what? I'm not going to get paid at all either. And I love that. I think that's, that is the spirit of the body. I'm not, just because you're the head doesn't mean you're separate from the body. I think that's beautiful. In my own life, I've definitely seen instances where you have to put yourself on the same level as the people that you're leading. I remember, when I was a kid, going off to summer camp, one of the things that it said, like, you know, in the church packet that they handed out, was like, your camp counselors will never ask you to do something that they would not be willing to do themselves. That actually stuck out to me when I was a kid. But when I became a camp counselor years and years later, it made a lot of sense, you know. In the same way, being an RA at Hardin Simmons, I remember I had to make some conscious decisions to not break rules that I wanted to break, because I was asking my men, my charge, to not follow those rules. And I was honest with them about it. I was like, you know what? Some of these rules aren't fun, but I had to make a decision to follow this rule. And you know what? Like, I'm not a really strict RA, but I'm going to lead by example. And that's how Jesus leads. You know, he gets down on the same level as his people. And you know, you see, you know, putting yourself on that same level is how you become, you know, the best leader that you can be. You know, you make everyone feel like an in-grouper. I think that this is such a cool movie to bring so many of these concepts that we've had, you know, in the previous films. Just really that one scene. And I kept looking for it. And, you know, I thought maybe that was it. And then when they've got him and it's just the blue sky against him, and he's you know, physically above everyone else in this whole scene. And, you know, like, but he, you know, and like there's the blue sky behind him, and then, you know, the shot cuts back and it's the masses of people. And then he's like, it's just, I was like, that is it. That is what a leader does. So yeah, I think that hopefully I covered everything. I know there are a lot more of the principles of management, and I really just wanted to pick 3 so I could highlight them, because that wasn't really a new concept. And then I talked about the 6 steps towards understanding why you're following. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Gave me a better picture of what it means to be a leader. Put yourself on the same level. All right.